Hi, everyone. Good morning, and thank you for joining us today. How are you all doing? Good summit so far? Awesome. Well, before we get started, we're going to be talking about Google Earth Studio today, but I just wanted to introduce you to Peter and Patrick, our TAs that will be helping out. We're going to today's session is going to be a mixture of slides and then a little bit of demoing together. And then another part of the time I would like to just kind of show you a little bit more as to what Earth Studio has to offer. And if time permits, maybe some time for questions. And so with that, I'm Mike Tavendale. I'm a program manager on the Geo for Environment team. And today we're going to be really going over the basics of Google Earth Studio. As to what Google Earth Studio is, it's a web-based animation tool for Google Earth satellite and 3D imagery. The magical part about it is it all happens inside the browser, and what you see here is just a screenshot of the main UI. We have really the camera viewport front and center. We have our attributes, which are all the elements that we can animate. You'll see our camera position as well as our camera rotation values. And then we also have more special attributes that you can animate, such as time of day. You can also animate the camera roll, so you can bank the camera to make some interesting fly-throughs. And as you can see, it is timeline-based, so you can kind of see everything happen over time. And then on the top, we have playhead controls, just to be able to navigate and work with that timeline. And then on the top right, we have our save snapshot view. It basically takes a screenshot of what you see in the main camera viewport in the center. And then we also have our render button for you to actually turn your animation into a video. And then with that, just to kind of show you some footage, here's an animation reel essentially made up of footage created inside of Earth Studio.
The U.S. Women's National Team will be celebrating their record-setting third Women's World Cup trophy in the 5 boroughs, with the ticker tape parade later today in Norman Hall.
And just to give probably a slight caveat as far as the animation reel that we just saw, all the graphics and labeling that you saw was all done after the fact. Earth Studio does let you export the camera data inside of Earth Studio into Adobe After Effects, which makes it really easy for compositing and post-production. But that being said, let's go over some of the main features that Earth Studio has to offer. It really gives you full breadth as far as ability to create custom camera animations that feel dynamic and fluid. You're able to really manage your projects, create folders, and really itemize things into folders. And you're able to share with coworkers, colleagues, and to be able to kind of work on animations between the team. And of course, you can render videos directly from Earth Studio, we're actually relying on cloud rendering as far as being able to produce videos out of the box, so to speak. You can also render out image sequences locally. This is particularly useful if you're interested in taking it into other programs such as After Effects. And of course, we do have KML and KMZ support, so this makes it really easy to be able to bring in those files that you might have created from Google Earth or My Maps. And we also have quick start projects. These are your animation templates that we've created based on common camera moves. And the thinking here is just to be able to get you started quicker and to be able to create compelling animations very quickly. And then, yeah, last but not least is what I mentioned earlier for some of our more advanced users, being able to take the camera data into Adobe After Effects have just proven to be very useful. And so I think I probably just want to spend a couple minutes and just talk a little bit about the imagery. We're using the same imagery as Google Earth, and working on the product for some time, still continually blown away by just the level of realism, particularly in areas where we have this 3D imagery available. And of course, depending on the location geographically, the imagery can be updated quite regularly, but of course it really depends on where in the world you're looking at. And so just a couple images just to kind of give you the breadth of the realism that's available. Here we see Tokyo, and also with more natural landscapes, here being Grand Canyon. The level of detail is really astonishing. And then here's Sydney, Switzerland, and Berlin. And then this one is a great image as far as just showing the ability to be able to change for inside of Earth Studio. You can change the camera to be able to create more of your wide-angled shots, and you can also, on the other end, create more telephoto looking shots. And we also let you change the time of day, essentially the position of the sun, and we light up the scene accordingly. And inside the tool, I'll show you a little bit later on, we do have an overlay that just gives you an idea where we have this 3D coverage. So that's not to say in places where we don't have 3D that you won't see anything. You'll always see imagery available. It's just the question is when you zoom in low enough altitude-wise, do you see that 3D imagery being available? And then just a couple more examples. Here, just particularly focusing on KML and KMZ import into Studio and seeing some of our partners create really nice animations that are more in the data visualization side of things. So here, one of our partners, Aclima, they imported essentially air quality data into Earth Studio, and we're seeing sort of a nice pull out with a bit of rotation, and you can really kind of see the air quality extruded as far as being polygons and how it creates a very nice visualization. And so it shows, in this particular case, just the campfire that happened in Bay Area and how that affected air quality at the street level. And then here's another one. Just showing the affected areas of a fire that happened in Oregon. And then, just in case if you haven't signed up already, you can do so at g.co/earthstudio. Just fill out a form, and we do approve on a daily basis. And Patrick here will be able to help out as far as for the folks that still haven't had access yet, and we can kind of work that out for you. And before we go into a demo, just kind of want to go over some of the requirements. Being web-based, it does require an internet connection. You do need a Google account to be able to sign up and access the tool. And right now, RStudio only works in the Chrome browser. And as far as the content that you create, we do require a display of our attribution. So that's first and foremost the Google Earth logo, and depending on your animation, we will display attribution as far as our third-party imagery data providers. And then we also do have geo guidelines depending on how you want to use this footage, whether it be for print or it be for web. And so I'll be able to pull that up later just for the folks that naturally have questions around that. And then with that, I was going to jump in. So as mentioned, we have sort of 2 demo sessions here. The first one is kind of hoping that we can all participate together, and we'll just be going over the quick starts so that you can see how you can quickly produce some compelling animations. As we do that, I'm just going to get set up here. Ready to project. And yeah, I guess, can we get a quick show of hands? Who has access to RStudio? Awesome, awesome. And for those who haven't, Patrick will kind of work around the room. Maybe we can start from the back. Feel free to flag him. It's the gentleman with the RStudio hat, so you can't miss him. And then we'll go slowly. We've bucketed about 20 minutes for this. So as folks are getting adjusted, we'll sort of get started on the quick starts. So when you do get access, as the ones who already do have access, you notice you get the email notification that contains a link to the tool, which is earth.google.com/studio. And you also get a link to our user documentation. So upon clicking on the tool link, you'll come to our landing page. You'll see that you have a couple options. You can start a blank project, or if you click on the drop down here, you can see quick starts. So if we go ahead and click on that, you'll see that we have zoom to, as it suggests. You're zooming into a point of interest, and then we have an orbit. We have a point-to-point that lets you fly from up to 6 points of interest, one by one. And then we have spiral. So this is a little bit of a corkscrew move. So picture you circling around a point of interest, a wider orbit radius, and as you get closer to the ground, it becomes a smaller orbit. And finally, we also have a fly to an orbit. So a bit of a combo move. You fly to your point of interest, and then from there, you make the orbit. So for the first one, maybe we can try point to point. You'll notice once you get into a quick start, we sort of kind of simplify the UI, and it becomes a series of inputs, sliders, and just a series of steps to get you through as far as just creating that animation. So I'm going to pick a location here. The input works just like how you would expect searching in Google Maps. You can type in a very specific address, name of a landmark, and it will be able to take you there. Once you've entered, it will populate the camera viewport. In this case, I picked Tokyo Tower. So I'm going to go ahead and hit the green arrow, and now it's asking for me to enter the second point of interest. So I'm going to put another one here. Let's go nearby. This is Tokyo Station, and you can zoom in and out. All I'm doing here is I'm taking my mouse, right-clicking, and holding onto it, and basically from that I'm able to kind of move up and down. So you can see here jumping from 2 points. Before I show you more ways to finesse this, I'm going to actually add a couple more locations. So staying around the neighborhood, so to speak, I'm putting in here the Imperial Palace. And then we can kind of just see us jumping from place to place. It's doing it quite nicely. And then I'm just going to add one more. I'm going to go a little bit further away, the Big Ben in London. And then let's see how it looks. And so now we've created a point-to-point with 4 locations, and basically what you see as far as next to each of these POIs is there's a number here being 2, and this is basically the number of seconds that you're essentially resting at a location. So if I made it 5, it would just mean we would hold longer there, or if I wanted the transition to be quicker, I can dial it down. And right now, point-to-point lets you add up to 6 locations. And depending on how far you go, sometimes if you're moving quite far, you might want to think about how you're traveling to the location. So if you're at the bottom, say in Japan, and you're trying to go to North America, you might see more spinning because you're coming up and you're naturally traveling quite a long distance. So thinking about just your camera orientation usually helps as far as trying to avoid some of the sort of jerkiness in the animation. And then once you're done, you just hit the green arrow, and you can see that we've essentially created the animations for you. The one thing to note here is they really are, as the name suggests, they're quick starts. So unfortunately, once you've made it up to this view where you're seeing all the keyframes on your timeline, you can't actually go back to the quick start view and make adjustments. Say if you wanted to change or remove a point in the animation. Essentially, if you were to go back, and you can do it not just from the landing page. If you went File, New, you can see the quick starts are here as well. If I were to click on one, it would actually treat it as I'm essentially starting a new project. So I'm just making sure, does everybody have access now? We're doing okay. I'm going to do one more, and then I'm actually going to hit render, because you're probably wondering, okay, I've made my animation, how do I actually get the video? So let me just quickly show you another one. So in this case, it will be a zoom to. I'm going to do Dodger Stadium. Again, just using the right-click button on the mouse, I'm able to zoom in. And then here, because it's a zoom to, first I click where I'm zooming to, and then now I'm choosing that starting altitude where I'm going to be zooming down from. So I'm going to get it a little bit closer in. And then now And here's so again, you see the keyframes in the timeline, and you're now ready to render. Here's a little keyboard. If you hit N, you'll notice that you see these 2 yellow dots. That's essentially defining my sequence as far as what I want to render. So I'm going to hit the render button at the top. You can see that you can name the what the rendered file would be called. So you can and then as mentioned, we can do an image sequence or a video. You can change the number of frames. So if you wanted to just do so if I just wanted to do the tail end of it, I can make that selection now. And then also as the dimensions, right now it's defaulted at 1920 by 1080. We actually let you render up to 4K. And as mentioned, we do have the attribution that is required, but that being said, we do give you some options as far as placement, understanding that depending on your use case, you might have other graphics that you want to position in maybe where the logo stands today. And also, you can also drag, if you will. And then once you're happy with it, you essentially just hit submit. And then from here, we're making a call to our cloud renderer to actually queue up the animation that you just created. And then when it's finished, you'll get an email. And just to give you a little bit of as to what the limitations are, we let you render up to 4K as mentioned. We do have a daily quota. It's 18,000 frames, which comes out to about 10 minutes at 30 frames per second, which is pretty good, but just wanted to keep you aware. And then, of course, we keep your completed renders for up to 10 days. So the hope is that you would be able to, that would give you enough time to actually download it and store it. And there are other things where we do, if you right click, you'll see these map styles. So as you notice, there's nothing on the map right on the imagery that we see in the main viewport. But like Google Earth, we let you turn on what we call map styles. So with exploration, these are showing borders, labels, places, and roads. And then if I were to do everything, that essentially would mean all borders, labels, places, roads, transit, landmarks, and water. So the current limitation with cloud rendering is, unfortunately, these map styles won't be rendered if you selected the option to cloud render. However, if you did an image sequence, it would be rendering locally on your machine, and we would be able to give you those map styles. And so and the email pretty much looks like this. You'll see it come through. It will take longer depending on the length of your animation and the desired resolution output. So 4K is naturally going to take a little bit longer than your HD films. But that being said, also, like, there are other factors that come into play. So if your animation is a lot of pretty much entirely 3D versus say a mixture of satellite and 3D, that could come into play as well. But generally, it's a pretty quick turnaround, and we really do enjoy this feature. And just to kind of show you an output. it's pretty good. You can pretty much directly upload it to YouTube from there. Of course, if you want to add some type of annotation, we'll go over that. You can either bring it, KML and KMZs are a great way to start annotating your imagery. So I was going to say, any questions around the quick starts? I feel like they're pretty self-explanatory. So I think with that, if it works for, oh, question?
Yeah, I have a question. So you said that you have 10 days to download this. Are you able to like save the project on your local drive and like re-upload it?
Great question. So the question was, because we have that restriction as to how long you have to essentially download the video, can you save your project so you can download it, you can export it at a later time, or if you miss the window, re-render it? The answer is yes. Simply, you can go to the File menu on the top left and hit Save, and name your file. And so next time you go into our studio, you can either open it, and that chime, I don't know if you will catch that, that was basically saying that the cloud render that we just sent through is now complete. But here on the landing page, you can open projects, and so you can search. So you can open your project, and you'll see it's right here. So you can save it within the program, but you can also choose to export it. So if you wanted to share your work with a colleague, you just go to File, Export, and you should see Earth Studio Project. And what's great about Earth Studio Project files is they're very light in file size, just because they're essentially a JSON file, and it makes it really easy to email, share with team members, and as far as importing, simply drag and drop. And you can make changes from there. And on that note, before I show you more of the other features, oh, question?
So your renderings or your saved projects can only be seen on Chrome?
I guess the question is, can your animations only be viewed in Chrome? So as far as making the animations and being able to use the tool, Earth Studio itself, currently it is limited to Chrome, so you would need the Chrome browser to be able to make these animations. But as far as the videos, once it gets rendered and you download them, you're actually just downloading it. We make a call directly from the email, and so it just downloads locally. And so really the Chrome part of thing is really as it relates to being able to use the tool.
Is there a way to link multiple quick starts next to each other?
That's a great question. So the question was, can you, in theory, link together quick starts? The answer is you can, but it is a lot of keyframes because we're doing quite a lot of things behind the scenes. So as long as you match essentially your last frame and your first frame of the two quick starts that you're trying to conjoin, they should work. But that being said, depending on the type of camera animation, easing becomes a factor. So like how well are you actually moving between keyframes as far as keeping things smooth and fluid, that may become an issue. But you know, I've seen someone do a zoom to, and then they match the last frame of that with the first frame of point to point, and in some cases I've seen it actually work quite well. So definitely encourage you to give it a shot, but you may find some kinks in your animation to work yourself through. So with that, so we've talked a lot about the quick start. So I'm going to just actually start a blank project. And starting a blank project, you get your startup screen as far as what you want to name your project. And you can actually make changes to your dimensions. So some of the settings that you see in your render setup. And also you can change the frames, or if you want to go by time codes. Some people find that a little bit more intuitive. And we also do actually have planets, specifically Moon and Mars, that you could animate with. So I'm going to, I like my settings. I'm going to just create a 2 keyframe animation. So I'm from Hong Kong, so typical Google Earth behavior, you go to where you come from. And then, so I talked a little bit about before as far as camera controls. So holding onto your right click on your mouse and kind of allows you to zoom in and out. If you just drag with your left click, you can kind of just pan around. And so in Hong Kong, we have really nice 3D. So to be able to tilt the camera, you can hold down Option or Alt, and that really allows you to kind of see the 3D in its glory. And then I'm just going to pick a location here. Let's go. Kind of like this view. I'm going to go ahead and click this button. It's what we call the keyframe or attributes. And so by doing that, saves me a couple clicks, because what I'm essentially doing is I'm locking all the values that you see on the left here onto my timeline. So now if I were to change the view or maneuver the camera viewport, you'll notice that certain things have turned yellow. This basically means it's a way for us to, it's a UI cue to let you know, hey, the values have changed. Is this intentional? You can reset by just dragging the playhead further along. So in this case, I liked where I locked my values on. So I'm going to move further down the timeline, and let's maybe come a little bit over here. And now I'm just going to click on the yellow buttons. And another shortcut is Command or Control. If you hold that with your left arrow, it will take you to the beginning of the timeline. Similarly, if I did Command or Control right arrow, it will take me to the very end. And as I showed you before, if you press N, it will kind of allow me to designate my timeline space that I want to work with. So now when you do Command or Control left or right arrow, it will just take you to the beginning or the end of your animation. And so hitting spacebar allows you to play. And so just like that, created a animation just essentially flying along Hong Kong and the harbor here. At the top, probably just other things to quickly go over is we do have this full screen view. It's really nice if you just want to kind of get a sense of what my render would look like. And so that's why when you go into full screen, we take away UI elements, and you're really able to kind of see, oh, okay, this is what it will look like with the Google Earth attribution. And this is your playback option. So similar to editing programs, usually it's on loop. So when you get to the end, it automatically keeps going. You can have it just play once so that it doesn't continuously loop. You can have what we call ping pong, which basically means it'll play backwards when it reaches the end. And then here, this button allows you to toggle. Right now, we have it in frames. But again, depending on what you prefer, you might just want to be working in actual time. And so in this case, we can see our animation is 10 seconds long. And then this button, as I mentioned, is your screenshot button, but it only takes a screenshot of what's in the camera viewport. So if I did that, you'll see that it will capture it. And what's cool with snapshots that get created is you can also drag and drop. So if you're doing location scouting for a video or project that you're working on, you can share that with your colleague, and it will take them right there. It's showing, I opened another tab where I had time of day turned on, so that's why everything is dark, in case you're wondering. But it's the same shot. And then, let's see here. We went over rendering. As far as like changing values go, so you can lock the values by clicking these buttons, but you can also scrub them too. So here I'm at 719 meters, and I come up as I get to the end of my animation. Say if I wanted to keep it consistent, I can either, first off, to change the values, you can scrub just by holding your cursor over the value, or you can actually just enter it. And so in this case, say if I wanted to make this more like a helicopter shot, and wanted to keep the altitude at the same, I can just copy the value, go to the very end, and then you'll see that now throughout the duration of the animation, I'm staying at that same altitude. And then now we can talk a little bit about easing. Just gonna make my screen a little bit bigger here. So with easing, we do have, so there's these keyframes. You can drag over them, and once they're highlighted, they'll turn blue. If you right click, you'll see that we'll be able to give you some options. So ease in essentially slows down the motion as you enter the keyframe, and then ease out speeds up as you leave the keyframe. So usually we'll want to ease out maybe at the beginning of your animation and then ease in at the end. I'm going to do auto ease. So it saves me a click, but you'll see that I've applied a little bit of easing now, because you can tell with these arrows that come on either side of these two sets of keyframes. I'm going to bring them a bit closer together. It's very subtle, but you're basically saying, instead of just a linear motion, just starting to introduce the concept of speed. So from the beginning, we speed up as we leave the keyframe, and then we slow down as we enter the keyframe. And then that is the easiest way. If you wanted to have a little bit more control, you can actually open up the curve editor. This is a little bit more of an advanced feature, but I'm not a animator by training, and so I can attest. And we do have a lot of tutorials, but it does take a little bit of time of getting used to, but it really pays off as far as just being able to make your animations feel a little bit more alive. So I'm going to just show you, I'm going to make it really obvious here. Let's go to another section here. So sorry, what was that? When I'm moving the mouse, so the question is, what interaction is exactly happening as I make the keyframes. So for the most part, I'm clicking and dragging. It's when when you see me over these buttons, it's when I'm clicking to lock my values, essentially. But a lot of time, I would say, it's more about framing your animation. So getting that right look, composition that you're after, tilting, panning. That's really a lot of what I'm doing right now. But here, I'm just doing a pan, but I just want to show you what the easing looks like. If you click on pan, because that's the only attribute that I added values for. And actually, before I do that, I'm going to do the same thing. Right-click, Auto Ease. You can see I've applied easing with the arrows coming on the sides of the keyframes. Clicking into the actual attribute for pan in this case opens up the curve editor. And basically, like After Effects, we have Bezier curves, and so this really allows us to make adjustments as it relates to speed over time. And what you'll see here is you can kind of move these arrows, and essentially now it'll be like a slow moving into kind of like a whip. I hit undo. And then also, you can kind of move them around as you see fit. But if you want to make sure that they're moving, just gonna restart here. Do my pan again. Auto ease. If you hold down Shift, it locks to the axis. So basically, it means that I'm essentially making sure that as far as the stops in my animation, they stay the same. When you start moving these up and down, it makes for more of a dramatic move, but on the flip side, it may be a little bit jarring. But basically, what I'm doing now is I'm making the pan slow, and then in the middle, it speeds up, and then it slows back down again. And this is just one attribute, right? So if I were to so it means instead of just pan, you can change all of the attributes. And to be able to select multiple attributes in the curve editor, you hit Shift. And then similarly, you can kind of drag them together. So it's the same logic as far as being able to really start introducing the idea of speed. I do recommend, right now we're keeping all our animations pretty simple, but if you're really moving up and down at different levels of altitude, definitely would recommend that when you make changes in your curve editor, that you're actually making changes with multiple attributes. So then that way you don't have kind of things throwing you off. And Now I'm going to show you a little bit more how we're doing on time. We have 15 minutes, so I'm just going to show you a couple more of our animatable attributes. I'm going to go to a new location. And to see, so by default, you see your camera position and your camera rotation. If you hit on Add Attributes, it opens up this drawer, and you'll see that you have a couple of things that you can kind of check on and off. The first one is camera target. So I'm going to show you that one, one of my favorite features. It allows you to lock focus on a particular point of interest, no matter where your camera position is. So if I'm right on the ground and then I pull back up and I'm really far away, it will always maintain focus on the subject. So this is Madison Square Garden. You can either turn on camera target in the drawer, or you can actually right click and do set camera target. Then I'm just going to hit keyframe all, move my playhead. I'm going to pull up, tilt it some more. And you'll see now throughout, it's always looking at Madison Square Garden. So this is really useful. Just it's a very high quality looking shot for a really easy, and you can add multiple camera targets. So you can look at one subject and then move on to look at another subject depending on your story or project. And then I'm going to go to another location here. So go, and now I'm going to show you field of view, time of day, and I'm also going to show you roll. So every time you've added or checked items in that attributes drawer, they will populate at the bottom of your list on the bottom left here. So let's start with field of view. It's at 20 right now. I'm going to click on it and make it 60. Immediately creates that wide-angled look. I'm going to keyframe all. And then you know what? I'm going to go back down to roll. It's at 0 right now. Going to tilt the camera a little bit here. And then now let's get closer. This is the time of day. And then I'm also going to change my So now playing back the animation, we can see 3 things happening. We got that wide-angled look throughout, and as we get closer to our subject, we can kind of see that sun coming down. And what's also nice is that camera is kind of moving side to side, so it's feeling quite cinematic and quite alive. And again, you can drag over your keyframes, or if you click and do Command or Control A, it will highlight all of them. You can apply easing, and it will show. And now I want to show you a little bit more about KMLs. So starting a new project, I have one here of, it's an outdated subway KML, New York subway KML. I'm going to take out all the station names. What you'll see is really nice with Earth Studio is when you import a KML KMZ file, we'll inherit the KML tree. So you'll see how the different things are nested, just like how you would in Google Earth, and you can kind of turn them on and off as you see fit. Turn this off. And I'm actually going to turn everything off and just have one line show. What's cool about this is you can add it as an animatable property. So if you see these dots right here, you'll see keyframe opacity. If you click on that, now it actually shows up as an animatable attribute on your on the UI. So what that means is I can come up here, keyframe all, and say I don't actually want my KML to appear. I can dial it at 0. I'll move this. So by being able to control the opacity, you can fade on and off different KML layers. You can add, so I have this subway KML that I just added. I could add it again. And say if I wanted to do a similar treatment, but maybe with another line, I could do the same and then add it as a keyframe opacity, and now you'll see that it's listed twice, and so I could do the same thing. And here I forgot to turn off the station. So this is an effective method if you want to be able to animate on and off different layers of a KML, import it multiple times. It will come up as multiple line items, and you can really pick and choose what you want to animate. And now I'm also going to show you just what is supported as far as KML. I have this KML samples. So we do support place marks, as you can see here. We also do ground overlays. So this is a great way if you're thinking about, particularly in areas where we don't have 3D imagery, but we have satellite, but maybe it's a little bit less, it's outdated and you have access to more recent imagery. You could drape it on, create a ground overlay and position it, and then export it out of Google Earth, bring it into Google Earth Studio, and you can make an animation. So what else? Other things that we support, paths, tessellated. So yeah, KML and KMZs, they're great, and for Earth Studio, they work really well. It's a great way just to be able to annotate using workflows that you're probably familiar with. So definitely encourage you to try out what your KML files would and KMZ files would look like inside of Earth Studio. Just to show you a couple more things here. We'll also do extruded polygon, and then just moving the cursor here. And then I wanted to show you, so similarly with my maps, this is one that I found from the Colorado Department of Transportation. They're doing work on one of their highways. I believe this is the I-70. It's a 10-mile stretch in Colorado, and this is a my map. So you can just download the KML. In this case, I've already downloaded it, so I can show you what it looks like. So you'll see. And similarly, you can kind of turn things on and off. So yeah, the magic is whether it's my maps, whether it's files from Google Earth, we do have a really nice way of handshaking inside of Earth Studio. And I know we have 5 minutes to go, so I'm just going to show you a few more things. So that, let me, going to remove my KML. Under overlay, under view, we have available 3D areas. So this is what I showed earlier. This gives you that holistic view of where in the world we have this 3D coverage. You can turn off the clouds as well, so this is a good opportunity to show you that. With clouds, it's pretty straightforward. It's just on or off. But you can see we're heavy on coverage as far as in Europe and North America, and certainly parts of Asia. This isn't a render, you can't render this view, but it does allow you, it's really just a guide, so to speak. I'm going to open another project here. Okay, so this is the one we did earlier. This is a good opportunity to show you another thing. We have under view where available 3D areas was. You can actually click on viewport mask. And this again is a guide. It basically just lets you really focus on what's actually going to be in your rendered output. So this is a good opportunity to just go over project settings for a little bit. So here, say if you're making a video and you want to repurpose that video, you've made something for YouTube, it's 1920 by 1080, but you're thinking, hey, I want to be able to put it on our social handle. This is a great way to be able to kind of repurpose animations that you've already made. So say if we're making a Instagram story, I know it's 1080 by 1920. And then, so I'm going to key in the dimensions here, but this is a very neat feature. Scale existing keyframes to new duration. So I know with my Instagram stories, they're like 15 seconds. So I change it to time code, make sure it's 15, and if I click scale existing keyframes to new duration, it will automatically just resize my animation accordingly. And now you can see essentially I can just render this out and I've got myself something that I can use for various platforms. In this case, it's social media, but you can imagine different crops. So this is a great way just to get more mileage out of animations that you create. And then, now we have 2 minutes. Just a couple things here. So you can take URLs from Google Maps. You can come to Earth Studio, click on the main viewport, hit Command or Control V. It will take you to the same location. So if you have someone on the field, they can simply give you their URL from Google Maps, send it to you text, email. You can bring it into Earth Studio as a copy-paste and be able to start working at that very location. Just going to dial back my mask here. What else do we have? I know I'm with 1 minute to go, so I should probably, for good practice, open up for questions. So thank you for bearing with me. I know it's a lot, but obviously very excited to share all the features that Earth Studio has. So this is just a snippet. So to wrap, inside the tool, we link directly to our documentation page. This is super extensive. We have video tutorials and everything that we went through today with more detail and even more. So definitely a great resource. And within the tool, we have a feedback button. This is a great way for you to report bugs. However, it's not a great way if you want to get in touch with us. If you want to be able to, if you have a question, we definitely encourage you to join our user forum. And this, you'll be able to kind of see other problems that other users have reported or other findings. Sometimes it's a great resource as far as just seeing other people share their projects. So definitely encourage you to check out our user forum. And with that, yeah, any last minute questions? Patrick, go for it.
You showed extruded polygons. Are you able to provide data like attributes to those polygons in the visualization, kind of like you showed at the beginning with air quality?
So right now we're just really more of a viewer. So as far as the polygons that I showed, those were all created inside of Google Earth. So you could see the attributes in Google Earth, but as far as being able to quickly see them inside of Earth Studio, that's something that isn't available today.
Are you planning to enable API access to the tool?
Patrick, I don't know if you want to jump in there.
Yeah, actually, not at this point, but thank you. It's something that we've been thinking about. Thank you. Did I make that up? Sorry.
Can you add music?
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah, currently you would have to add music or audio in another program or after the fact, but currently we don't have any capabilities as far as supporting audio for playback inside of our studio.
Just quick question, can you access historical imagery in Studio?
As far as historical imagery, currently we don't have that ability. It is a very common feature request, and it's something that we've seen inside of Google Earth. So definitely something that we've heard, but currently we don't have a way of supporting it.
So for areas where you don't have the 3D data, is there a way for us to put our own high-res DSMs or DTMs in?
So right now, essentially the really only feasible workaround is if you, and this doesn't really work that well at scale, but if you were to create a ground overlay, you can drape your imagery, so to speak, over it, but that only really, of course, works for satellite. And again, depending on how much you're trying to inject, it might not actually be the most efficient way, but definitely it's been a good workaround that we've seen some of our users do today.
It's one other way of doing that as well. If you can convert that to any type of 3D geometry or whatnot, you can bring that into After Effects or other post-production softwares and use the camera from After Effects and compose it that way. So not super straightforward, but it's sort of possible.
Can you make a clip with like the quick start and then import that into a blank project? Or would you export both of those and do that in After Effects?
Say that one more time for me.
If you wanted to make a clip in Quick Start, because a lot of the stuff is already kind of like set up for you, and then import it into a blank project to continue building on it, could you do that?
Yeah, you could. You would just export it through the file menu on the top right. It'll come out as a project file, and then you can drag and drop or open it up, and essentially it'll just be like if you created all the keyframes, but you won't be able to go back to that quick start view and make changes. You would have to do it manually via keyframes.
Hi,
Hey.
Thanks for the presentation. So whenever I see an animation and I see data like the one you showed at the beginning that is air quality during an event, like a wildfire, I want to see a time series. Currently, I understand that's not something you can do, but I did see you hack at it a little bit with like adding multiple KMLs. I think probably a lot of people want to be able to do that. Do you have any recommendations? It's really hard to, we've tried to do it in After Effects, but you can't register the data. It doesn't work quite so well. Just wondering if you have some thoughts on that.
It's a very common ask, and we hear feedback, and we hear it, especially I'm sure a lot of you have seen Google Earth time lapse. You know how we're essentially traversing between different years over a given location. I've seen instances where, you know, again, putting it into a KMZ, KML, like as far as animated tiles, and it does work when you import it into Earth Studio, but it's not perfect. As in, when you render it out, you might not get the same. Like if you're looking for like every second I'm moving between tiles, it might not work out that great. So then you're back to kind of After Effects where you're like time remapping. So it's not really a perfect solution, but definitely something we hear and totally understand, especially now looking at effects of climate change, really major disasters. That before and after, or seeing change over time, is definitely a very important element. So definitely hear you loud and clear, but yeah, we are a little bit limited in how we treat that, and it sounds like you've had a pretty good hack at it too.
Hi, thank you for this presentation. This is the first time I'm using Earth Studio, so it's really cool, and I have lots of questions, but I'll stick to just one. I was wondering if, like, you create a timeline, like zooming into somewhere, are you able to like flip that, like flip your timeline to have it like zooming back out? Or can you like copy and paste your frames to like add that on so you can zoom out back the same way?
So let me make sure I understand. So is the question basically, can I copy elements from my timeline and be able to paste it like again in the timeline or in another timeline?
Yeah.
So I think from what I recall, and Patrick, hold me honest here, you can definitely copy and paste keyframes in the timeline. I don't know if you can do it between tabs though, but
Yeah, you can.
woo. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you can also select keyframes, like 2 sets of keyframes, and right-click on them and select time reverse keyframes. So if you have a zoom in, if you time reverse the keyframes, they will zoom back out. So you could select them, move your playhead, copy them, or paste them back in, and then reverse them. That way you have a zoom in and a zoom out.
And thank you for bearing with us. I know we're definitely a little bit over, so definitely appreciate everyone taking the time and spending it with us this morning. Do want to share that we will be part of the office hours, specifically these times. So if you have any questions or if you want to just drop by and say hello, more than welcome to. Thanks again, and enjoy the rest of your summit.